Have you ever been scrolling through social media and seen a post from someone who seems to have it all? You know the type. Perfect family, amazing job, luxurious vacations. They post a photo of their brand new, top-of-the-line sports car, the one you've been dreaming about. You feel that little sting, right? That mix of admiration and maybe something else. Then, a week later, you see a new post. It's a picture of that same sports car, but now it has a huge dent in the side. And what's your first reaction? If you're being really honest with yourself, did a tiny part of you feel good? It's a strange feeling, isn't it? A little bit of pleasure when we see someone else fail or suffer a misfortune. It's something most of us would never admit out loud. It feels wrong, maybe even a little evil. But what if I told you that this feeling is incredibly common? So common, in fact, that there's a specific word for it. The Germans, who are often very good at naming complex emotions, call it Schadenfreude. Schaden means damage, and Freude means joy. The joy of damage, the pleasure derived from another person's misfortune. Today, we're going to dive deep into this dark little corner of human behavior. We're going to explore why we feel this way, what it says about us, and whether it's something we should be worried about. This isn't about judging anyone. It's about understanding a very real, very human part of ourselves. Because believe it or not, that little thrill you get when the star quarterback of the rival team fumbles the ball, or when that annoying coworker who always boasts about their perfect life gets a flat tire in the rain, is a window into the inner workings of our minds. So, let's get into it. Why do we, sometimes, enjoy the failures of others? One of the biggest reasons behind this feeling is something called social comparison. From a very young age, we are constantly measuring ourselves against others. It's how we figure out where we stand in the world. Am I smart? Am I successful? Am I attractive? To answer these questions, we look around. We look at our friends, our family, our colleagues, and even celebrities we've never met. This comparison can be a good thing. It can motivate us to work harder, to improve ourselves, to strive for more. If your friend runs a marathon, you might think, hey, maybe I could do that too. That's upward social comparison, and it can be a powerful source of inspiration. But there's a flip side. When we constantly see people who seem to be doing better than us, it can take a toll on our self-esteem. It can make us feel inadequate, like we're falling behind in the race of life. Think about social media again. It's often a highlight reel of everyone else's greatest moments. We see the curated perfection, and we compare it to the messy reality of our own lives. This can lead to feelings of envy. Envy is that painful feeling of wanting what someone else has. It's not just wanting a nice car. It's wanting their nice car and feeling bad that you don't have it. So where does Schadenfreude come in? Well, when that person we envy, the one who seems to have it all, suddenly stumbles, it disrupts our comparison. Their failure brings them down a notch, and in a strange way that makes us feel better about ourselves. It's not that we actively wish them harm. It's more that their misfortune temporarily levels the playing field. It reduces the envy we feel. The gap between our reality and their perceived perfection shrinks, and that provides a moment of relief. It's like our brain is saying, see, they're not so perfect after all. They're human, just like you. This momentary boost to our self-esteem can be quite satisfying. Let's take a simple, everyday example. Imagine you have a coworker. Let's call him Bob. Bob is always the star of the weekly meetings. He's always praised by the boss. He gets the best projects. He seems to do everything effortlessly. You, on the other hand, feel like you're working just as hard, but you're not getting the same recognition. You might start to feel a bit of envy towards Bob. Now, one day, Bob is giving a big presentation to the entire department. He's confident, he's smooth, but then, halfway through, his PowerPoint presentation crashes. The file is corrupted. He can't recover it. He's left standing there, fumbling, unable to continue. The meeting ends awkwardly. Now, you're a good person. You'd probably feel a bit sorry for him on some level. But if you're honest, you might also feel a little spark of pleasure. That's schadenfreude. Bob's failure, in that moment, makes your own professional struggles feel a little less significant. It's a temporary ego boost, born from social comparison. Another key ingredient in the recipe for schadenfreude is the idea of justice or fairness. We all have a deep-seated desire to see the world as a just and fair place. We want to believe that good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. This is often called the just world fallacy. Of course, we know intellectually that the world isn't always fair. Bad things happen to wonderful people all the time, and some not so wonderful people seem to get away with everything. But that belief in a just world is powerful, and it shapes our reactions to other people's misfortunes. When we see someone we perceive as bad or undeserving fail, it can feel like the universe is balancing the scales. It feels like justice has been served. Think about a public figure, a politician or a CEO who is caught in a scandal. Maybe they were arrogant, corrupt, or treated people poorly on their way to the top. When news of their downfall breaks, there's often a sense of public celebration. People aren't just interested in the news. They seem to be actively enjoying it. This is schadenfreude on a massive scale. It's not just about one person's failure. It's about seeing a bad guy get what they deserve. It reinforces our belief that, in the end, there is some kind of cosmic justice. This also applies on a smaller, more personal level. Do you remember that bully from high school? The one who made life miserable for you and your friends? Imagine you run into them 20 years later, and you find out their life hasn't turned out so great. They're stuck in a dead-end job, they're unhappy, and they've lost that arrogant swagger they used to have. The feeling you might get in that moment is a potent mix of emotions, but a big part of it is likely to be shock. It feels like a form of delayed justice. The person who caused so much unhappiness is now unhappy themselves. It feels right. It confirms our worldview that people eventually reap what they sow. Now, this can get a little tricky. Our perception of who is deserving of failure is, of course, highly subjective. It's often tied to our own biases and our own sense of what is right and wrong. We are much more likely to feel schadenfreude towards people we don't like, or people who are part of an outgroup, a rival sports team, a competing company, or a political party we oppose. This brings us to group identity. Humans are tribal creatures. We have a natural tendency to form groups and to feel a strong sense of loyalty to our own group. This was essential for survival in our evolutionary past. Being part of a cohesive tribe meant protection, shared resources, and a better chance of staying alive. The flip side of this in-group loyalty is an inherent suspicion and competitiveness towards outgroups. And this is where schadenfreude really thrives. The failure of a rival group or a member of that group can feel like a victory for our own group. The most obvious example is sports. When your favorite team wins, you feel joy. But when your most hated rival loses in a humiliating fashion, you might feel an even more intense, more delicious kind of joy. It's not just about your team succeeding, it's about the other team failing. Their loss reinforces the superiority of your group. It's a bonding experience for you and your fellow fans. You can all share in the collective Schadenfreude. This isn't limited to sports, of course. It happens in politics, in business, and even in social circles. When a rival company launches a new product that turns out to be a massive flop, employees at a competing company might secretly rejoice. When a member of a different social clique embarrasses themselves at a party, others might gossip about it with a certain amount of glee. The failure of the other strengthens the identity of the US. It reaffirms that our group is better, smarter, or more successful. So far, we've talked about self-esteem, justice, and group identity. But there's another, perhaps more surprising factor that can play a role in Schadenfreude, and that is the perceived hypocrisy of the person who fails. We seem to take special pleasure in the downfall of those who present themselves as morally superior or who preach a certain way of life, only to be caught doing the very thing they condemn. Think of a health guru who spends years writing books and giving lectures about the importance of a strict, organic, sugar-free diet. They build an entire career on this image of purity and self-discipline. Then, one day, they are photographed coming out of a fast food restaurant, holding a giant greasy burger and a large soda. The public reaction is often brutal, but it's also filled with a kind of gleeful mockery. Why? Because it's not just a failure. It's a failure that exposes a hypocrisy. The person did not live up to the high standards they set for others. This kind of Schadenfreude feels particularly justified to us. It's not just that they failed, it's that their failure reveals a truth they were trying to hide. It feels like we've caught them in a lie. The bigger their moral grandstanding, the more pleasure people seem to take in their fall from grace. It's as if their hypocrisy makes them deserving of the misfortune in our eyes. We feel less guilty about our pleasure because it feels like we are punishing a form of deception. So, we have these main triggers for Schadenfreude: when someone we envy stumbles, when we feel justice is being served, when a rival group fails, and when a hypocrite is exposed. But what does this all mean? Is this feeling a sign that we are secretly bad people? The answer, according to most psychologists, is no. Schadenfreude is a complex, but normal, human emotion. It's a product of our evolutionary history, our social conditioning, and the intricate ways we protect our own sense of self. Feeling a fleeting moment of pleasure at someone else's minor mishap doesn't make you a monster. It's often an automatic, unconscious reaction. It's a flicker of an emotion, not a deep-seated desire to see others suffer. The problem arises when this feeling becomes a dominant part of our emotional life. If we are constantly seeking out the failures of others to feel good about ourselves, it can be a sign of our own deep-seated insecurity and low self-esteem. Constantly living in a state of comparison and envy is exhausting and damaging. It can trap us in a cycle of negativity. We become so focused on what others are doing or not doing that we neglect our own growth and our own happiness. True self-worth doesn't come from seeing others fall. It comes from building ourselves up. It comes from focusing on our own path, celebrating our own small victories, and learning from our own failures. Furthermore, an overindulgence in Schadenfreude can corrode our capacity for empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. It's what connects us to each other. It's the glue that holds society together. When we see someone suffering, empathy prompts us to offer help, to show compassion, to connect with them on a human level. Schadenfreude does the opposite. It creates distance. It turns another person's pain into our entertainment. If we let it, it can make us more callous and less connected to the people around us. So, how do we manage this dark little emotion? The first step is simply to be aware of it. The next time you feel that little spark of pleasure at someone else's misfortune, just notice it. Acknowledge it without judging yourself. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Is it because I envy this person? Is it because I feel they were being unfair or hypocritical? Is it because they are part of a rival group? Just this simple act of self-reflection can be incredibly powerful. It takes an unconscious reaction and brings it into the light of conscious thought. Once you understand the root of the feeling, you can start to challenge it. You can remind yourself that this person's failure doesn't actually make your life any better in the long run. You can try to shift your perspective from one of comparison to one of compassion. This doesn't mean you have to feel deep sorrow every time your rival sports team loses, but it might mean trying to cultivate a more generous spirit in your daily life. It might mean actively celebrating the successes of your friends and colleagues, even when you feel a pang of envy. It might mean choosing to focus on collaboration instead of competition. It could be as simple as leaving a positive comment on someone's social media post instead of scrolling past in silence. Another powerful antidote to Schadenfreude is gratitude. When we focus on what we are thankful for in our own lives, the achievements and possessions of others lose some of their power over us. Gratitude shifts our perspective from what we lack to what we have. It grounds us in our own reality and our own sources of joy. When you are content with your own life, you are less likely to derive pleasure from the misfortunes of others. In the end, the dark side of human behavior, this strange joy we sometimes feel at others' failures, is not something to be afraid of, but something to be understood. It reveals the complex interplay between our self-esteem, our sense of justice, and our tribal instincts. It's a reminder that we are all wired for social comparison, but it is also a reminder that we have a choice. We can allow this primitive emotion to guide our reactions, trapping us in cycles of envy and resentment, or we can choose a different path. We can choose to be aware, to be reflective, and to cultivate empathy and gratitude. The goal isn't to become a perfect saint who never has a negative thought. The goal is simply to be a more conscious and compassionate human being. The next time you see that dented sports car, maybe the first feeling is still that little spark of Schadenfreude, but perhaps the second feeling can be one of empathy. A simple thought like, "That's a shame. I hope they're okay." That small shift in perspective might not seem like much, but it's a step towards a more positive and connected way of living. It's a step away from the dark side and into the light. And that is a journey worth taking.